the impact of the changes made by government since 2023 is still with us, and in some instances intensifying in an adverse sense. Private people, firms and households have been adjusting, but the room for adjustment is limited because inflation has been with us for a while, unemployment has been with us for a while, low production has been with us for a while. So the savings for the households and companies or firms is low. So the adjustment is painful. People are adjusting by dropping certain things. If you were buying a load of water for 13,000 naira 3 years ago, and you are now asked to pay 50,000, water is an essential. So you may have to drop changing your dress, traveling, in order to have water. So those are drastic changes, very, very drastic. And the prospects for adjustment or containment doesn't seem to be there.
Yeah, some of the reasons why some Nigerians think that the government might be a little bit insensitive is, you know, when these policies are rolled out, everybody knows where this is headed. I mean, you know, when you remove oil subsidy, things are going to go up. There were promises of cushioning the effect of the so-called policy, but it does look like it was a deliberate effort or deliberate policy to impoverish Nigerians, even though on one hand they say they now free monies in order to do other things. Do you think those Nigerians are justified with those thoughts?
Two things I will call your attention to. There's a Chinese wisdom that says that a time of crisis is a time of opportunity. So some of these crises are opportunity for people. So the people who instigate it have something to benefit. So they go ahead. Secondly, there's a professor of economics, Professor Sita Ubu. He said, when you want to evaluate a public official, identify the people they are afraid of. If you want to evaluate a public official, check who he or she is afraid of. In most countries that we try to copy, we call them advanced countries, politicians or public officials are afraid of public opinion, which can show in elections. But here, they are neither afraid of public opinion nor believe that they can be elected, they can be thrown out of office. So they have no fear, and therefore they do what they like. So that is the simple situation in which we are. Because if public opinion mattered, you will be watching out for where the public is standing for the next election. Of course, somebody may decide to lose on the basis of principle that I believe that this is the correct thing. Regardless of what the public thinks, maybe eventually the public will come to know what somebody like Jimmy Carter was, somebody whose lifestyle was influenced by Christianity. When the Iranians attacked the U.S. embassy he could have used nuclear weapons. He could have invaded them massively, but he didn't do that. He tried to negotiate with them. When warmongers around him persuaded him to mount a military operation, it was a limited operation. Unfortunately, it failed, but he took it like a Christian and continued his life. People who voted for him voted against him in the second round, in his re-election. But he was glad to lose because he didn't want to do certain things that are against his ethics.
Do you think that could, repeat itself in 2027?
Well, in Nigeria, you don't have such people. I think Nnamdi Azikiwe was a man that was well brought up. He may not call him a Christian in the type of banner sense, but he is philosophically equipped. Jonathan was that kind of person, maybe because he came from a very small group and therefore had nobody to fight for him. Or he was thrown into politics by circumstances beyond his control. So he didn't think that he had, power. Like he said, I would rather nobody die for me to be in office. But some people will think that the whole people can die and they remain in office. And that's why when you elect people to offices, they convert it to power. But what the Constitution creates is office for performance of duties. But those who acquire it turn it to power to insist that they remain there and prevent others from ever nearing that office.
Well, one of Nigeria's key economic strategies of the 2024 is to increase non-oil revenues through improved tax collection. And of course, the mechanism for collection and the policies to better collect the taxes. But my question is, how effective do you think that will be, considering the challenges of tax evasion and the informal economic activities right now?
Well, tax evasion is a well-known phenomenon. But I think the problem in Nigeria is that many people do not have income from which they can pay tax. Several. Secondly, the government itself does not govern enough to know all the people in the country. Because if you can't identify people, you can't tax them. In the US, mainly, when people are born, they get an ID number, which cannot change. And that's why people migrate to the United States to give birth, become a citizen. Although it's being challenged now. But here, we don't have a record. If you go to Kokam, you will see people from Niger walking up and down, people from Chad walking up and down, people from Nigeria. Nobody knows anybody. So how can you tax them? And that is why the government is moving away from income tax to indirect tax, or from direct taxes to indirect tax. And that is what VAT is. They're intensifying it. They're trying to increase it because you can't escape it. But you can escape direct tax because the government does not know that you are there. And many people don't even know who the government is, And that's why you find tax farming. The government will employ some people or empower them to block the road. They'll be holding sticks. When you are passing, they ask you to give them something. Whether they give you receipt or not, or whatever the receipt, whether they print the receipt by themselves. So what actually happens is that the people in authority ask some people to pay them some amount and then authorize them to go and collect what they have paid. That's what's called tax farming. But people can evade it, but it's difficult. Sometimes you find security people in the security agencies, or people who are in government. They invest in some businesses like Ukeje. They have a sign they give to those thugs on the road. When they come, maybe they'll do their hand like this. They know that they belong, so they don't collect the money from them.
Right. One of the major issues out of 2024 would be the tax reform bill that is still pending in the National Assembly. So many persons have rejected it, especially people from the north. In fact, 2 governors, Kano and Bauchi, have rejected it in entirety. Some persons are saying that because of the way the president is going about it, trying to force his way without some sort of engagement, they're beginning to look at it from another eye. With what you have seen, do you think the tax reform bill is a welcome development at this time?
Well, I think the word or the term tax reform bill is promoted by the government. There is a finance act in Nigeria that is existing even now. What they are trying to do by this composite 4 bills is to grab power from either the constitution or existing laws. For instance, say in Enugu State, the business tax is a tax, under premises, signage. the Commissioner for Finance in Enugu is authorized to modify it by the law establishing those acts. So you don't go to Parliament every day to make changes. All what you need to do is to give people notice in the Gazette that effective from date, this rate will become this. You don't need to make laws every time. So the Minister of Finance, the Nigerian Minister of Finance, is authorized by law to make certain changes with respect to taxes administered by the federal government alone. But you can see there is a bill to, reenact. For instance, what is called value-added tax is a federal law that's under military rule ended sales tax at states. Now, what many people don't know is that value-added tax is a production tax. Production. For these your cameras, there is VAT in it. Whether it is manufactured in Nigeria, whether it's imported. The person who imported it, if it's imported, paid VAT. When you bought it, you paid VAT. The manufacturer, if it was manufactured in Nigeria, when he was buying inputs, he paid VAT on those inputs. So it's a production process. Selling is production. Selling is part of production. So the person who is consuming, you may consume for investment, that's when you're buying inputs, or you consume, or you may consume for final consumption. Whatever you are doing, once value-added tax is imposed on a product you demand, you pay the tax without knowing or without feeling it. But it affects sales because the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. Good. Now, when you want to change the law about allocation, distribution of revenue, you don't, there's a revenue allocation and fiscal commission. Although the value-added tax law is not under that, but since you want to make changes, and the changes involve all the states, you need to consult them, and the forum for consultation is the National Economic Council. The governors had said that they were not aware. Even if they were aware, but they have publicly said they are not aware, then you should stop. The way it is going, the committee was set up by the government. When the committee finishes its work, it will submit to the government and then disappear. But the committee appears to become part of the state, arguing, proselytizing, preaching, evangelizing. Is the committee still on or off? So that's worrisome. But for me, there are some critical components of that law that can be turned to political tools against people. When you want to establish, one of the provisions there is for a tax ombudsman. In other words, a kind of general for taxation. Now, if there's a tax ombudsman and somebody in government wants to reach out to me, may ask you to bring your supporters to come and join him, and you tell him that your height is you are too tall, that majority of us are short, so why should tall man be ruling us? You may ask the ombudsman to look into your taxes. Without whether you paid or you didn't pay, the ombudsman can say that you should come. If you don't come, he will say that you will not run for the next election, that he has not certified your tax clearance. Although it's not his power, but once he says it in public, you become embarrassed. All your rivals will say, step down. I want to give you an example. During the 1978 election, some of you were not born then. Chief Michael Ani was chairman of Federal Electoral Commission, FEDECO. He said that Zik did not pay tax on his property, on one of his properties in Onitsha, and I was going to disqualify him from running for the president.
Wow.
Of course, like I mentioned before, Zik was an eminently educated person. He fought Ani, went to court, went to the public opinion, and defeated him. It was not the role of FEDECO to determine who has paid tax or not. But there was a collusion. You know, people saying he didn't pay, and then they turned out to say he paid, but he didn't pay as and due. You know, it's a very risky thing. Nigeria is a country, is a one state, but there are multiple governments. So you should not set up a tax ombudsman. We have the Public Complaints Commission. What is he achieving? So you set up too many bodies. That's a very dangerous office to create. You know, the president appoints IG of police, director of prisons, custom, then he acts ombudsman. So he can put you under a lid anytime he wants. So many of the things there, changes in VAT rates can be done by the Minister of Finance by public notice. It doesn't require changing the law. Now, the Academic Staff Union has spent years fighting the government for funding of universities, federal universities to start with. They said the government should fund the universities by imposing an additional tax on companies. Yes, companies pay income tax, they pay all kinds of levies, and then they pay educational tax. You can unify them and take that portion out for, but now that law says we are going to abolish that TED fund and transfer it to loan. But we are going into what is ending. In the United States, the current president of the United States promised many people who borrowed money to go to university that he will write off their loan, outstanding loan. But many people went to court. The Supreme Court of the United States said the president does not have the power to forgive loan because that loan is from the public treasury. If he forgives it, who will pay? And you will continue with the loan system. Now, with unemployment rising, especially among university people, you are giving people loan to go to university. Where will they get the job from which they will pay? We have done loan before. We have had student loan in the 70s. What happened was that the Students' Loan Board did not keep record, either deliberately, because they were giving loans to those who they knew. In the end, nobody paid, and the Students' Loan Board was scrapped. When the government came in, there was this current government, there was talk of loan. You know, people, they even get people in secondary school like GTC in Osun State. But you are no longer hearing of the loan now because they have exhausted the money they put there. Those who have not gotten, what's happening? What's the school fees now for universities? Because if you say you give loan and ask the universities to charge economic rates, then they can use that to finance themselves. But you want to keep down the fees, give loan, and abolish state fund. It doesn't seem to make sense. And government is creating more and more universities. More and more. So a lot of things are wrong with it, but I think the politics of revenue allocation has taken over. But if the congressmen or the people in the National Assembly were doing what they ought to do, there's money provided for them to hire experts to advise them. If they were hiring those experts, hiring university professors to work for them, they will do the analysis and the matter will be dealt with. But I think the government is bent on buying support and getting it. It doesn't make sense.
But with the revenue allocation, don't you think that is going to kind of bridge that gap?
No, I think it's very, very wrong because Nigeria is one common market. Nigerian breweries, its headquarters is in Lagos, but the sales area is the whole of Nigeria. You cannot say that 60% of what was derived from value-added tax paid by Nigerian breweries should go to Lagos. Because if we set a boundary around Lagos, all that production cannot be consumed in Lagos. It cannot be consumed. And because the country is large, it empowers companies based in Lagos to increase production. The income tax of the workers go to Lagos State. then you want the value added tax to 60% to go to, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's unfair. Like equity in economics, in philosophy, is anything that benefits more people. Any change you make that benefit more people is said to be equitable. But if you make changes that benefit lower number of persons and penalize more people, it's not equitable.
Well, some people also think that it may be a fair deal, given that in the north, for instance, they rarely drink beer, they rarely consume beer. And in fact, the Hizbah have been seen severally destroy trucks of beer. And so if you do not consume beer, why gain from the tax of beer?
That is political cleverness. If you check alcohol consumption, the military, police, custom, all those uniform people, they are the major consumers of alcohol, and they are spread all over the country. Even though there is a religious-based ban on sale of alcohol in the north, if you go to military barracks, you can drink till you drown. So they have their clubs there. Even those who are not Christians, they take alcohol inside their barracks. But the more important thing is that inside that alcohol, say beer, there is value added tax on hop, maize, barley, which is consumed all over the country. The portion that is inside that alcohol should not go to any one particular person. I'm not telling you. And secondly, there is some danger in a binary system. You know, if you take a coin, what is called a fair coin, if you toss it, it either goes up, it comes up, or face down. But Nigeria is more than two. So when anybody tells you north, south, what the person is trying to do is being clever, because there is some group in the north that call themselves the leaders of the north. What they say is what the north has said. And what is emerging is that what some people in the south say is what the south say. But it's not true. It's not true. Let us assume that three of us are from one father, but different mothers. Are you following? If, as the oldest person, I'm the first child or first son, I cannot say that my name is now we. Because if our father brings something, he will give to Belinda, give to you, and give me my mother's own portion. From my own mother's portion, I will take. The president is from the south. What is happening to the southeast?
So with River State, you know, being one of the most biggest hub for oil production, you're insisting that the VAT will still be shared to other states that are not into oil production.
The VAT, what they are trying to do is to make changes in the allocation of VAT. Now, if you don't want to share it equitably, you can abolish the VAT and ask every state to mount their sales tax. You will find that a company like, say, Erisco, that is selling tomato paste, you know, that tomato paste you see, it contains a lot of things. It's not only tomato, it contains flour, contains sugar, things that thicken it. And the people who really consume those sweeteners, if you live in Lagos, you know, your state, people make a lot of stew. You go to Kano, people eat all kinds of tuwo with jollof. Every state will mount their own border. If they see a Risco product, they will tax it. And if the tax increases, the production will decline. You get what I'm saying? So the Nigerian market is a market for all companies that are registered, because this production is by firms. They may, okay, we'll just watch. So certain things are excluded from VAT, like yam, cassava, orange. But go to the road, you will see people holding stick, waiting for vehicles coming from Benue that are carrying yam. They're collecting money from them. you can never see the amount collected by those people because they are farmed out by local government. Even between here and 9th Mile, you will find every village in Ngo has a center where they are collecting money. Within Enugu here, different clans come with a stick to collect goods, money from people. That is what will happen if you change the tax rule, because every state government has power to make laws to collect tax. If they impose control into their area, those companies in Lagos will have problem. Even banks, because if a bank has a license and you set up, in Enugu, and you transfer your VAT to Lagos, the state government may impose an additional penalty on you. They may say, oh, your company is using a generator, is polluting the air, pay us this, And that type of competitive taxation will destroy the economy. Something that is in that tax law that is also not very good is abolition of tax for some income level. What they are talking about is people on salaries, level 1. But there are many people outside government who are begging to be employed on level 1. Those people are not excluded because they will pay tax when they pass on the road. So, and experience shows that when you exclude people from tax, you may create a downstream problem. This cattle problem we are having in Nigeria now, it started in the 1960s when the Northern Regional Government, because it was controlled by traditional rulers, they were imposing tax on cattle. I think the Hausa word for it is jangale. But because they were traditional rulers, they were operating by discretion. Sometimes when they see a big bull in your farm, they take it. Not that even the emir, but his son or his grandson, they can go there and say, I like this bull, bring it to my house. If you don't bring it, they ask the traditional police to cane you. You grow your crop, they go there, they say, when you finish harvesting, bring some to us. Things they were doing before colonial rule. So people like Aminu Kano mounted pressure and they abolished the tax. Now that they abolished that jangali tax, people who own thousands of cattle don't pay anything on because there's abolition of tax on cattle. But one cattle, the price is higher than the minimum wage for 1 year.
Wow.
Right.
So if a state like Sokoto is full of poor people, why should you say poor people should not pay tax there? They should pay according to their rates. If you are earning 10 naira and you are asked to pay 1 naira, that is what you will pay. It has.
But going forward into 2025, what changes would you like to see? You've highlighted a number of things from the tax reform bill, which is still being debated. But going forward, in this year 2025, what would you love to see change in our policy and the way and manner that we, create and implement policies in Nigeria?
The problem we have is inadequate resources to tackle our many problems. If we prioritize our problem, government should concentrate on those ones. Take the problem of pollution, plastic pollution. Many people have gone into making pure water, bread, and the government imposes some tax on them, but is unable to collect the waste. But they will ask them to write on the board, dispose properly. How? But the government can say, okay, since you are paying 5 naira per unit of bread or pure water produced, you will pay only 1 naira. But we will now ask you, all of you who are licensed to produce pure water, it is your duty to collect the waste. However you do it, or what we do, we don't want to see that waste. I'm sure they will inaugurate it. You have a motor park or taxi park, you go there, you see waste inside the gutter. But the government collects some tax from those people. But you cannot collect he cannot remove the waste. He said, look, any waste we see within 100 meters diameter where you are, you are responsible. And we set up administrative courts to solve those problems. That is way to solve problems. So you reduce the size of government. The, government expenditure should go down. It shouldn't be pursuing revenue, because that revenue is coming from, you take from Peter and they pay to Paul. Why? Reduce what you are doing. Government should reduce, like the number of universities. Nobody can remember that. If you go to an interview now and you are asked to name 20 federal universities, you may fail. It's not because you don't know, but the universities are coming up like cricket. Yeah. One person, the federal government, led by the president, is controlling several universities. So many academics will leave research and be lobbying for somebody who knows the president to be vice chancellor. And that's why you find the kind of thing that happened at Nnamdi Azikiwe University happening.
Wow. This is interesting, really. I mean, the perspective you brought is totally different, quite different from what we're used to. Some of these policies, from your endpoint, it looks like they are not well thought out in order for these things to come out. But then one wonders, really, isn't this president the kind of person who wants to be perfect, hiring the best of the best? I mean, does it mean that these people don't know some of these things that you're saying?
If you go back to what I told you about, who is he afraid of? If he fears the people, he will, the behavior will modify.
So he doesn't fear the people, that's what you're saying?
No, let me give you an example. In the 1950s, when Zik was premier of Eastern Region, he made some appointments, or the party made some appointments. The late Igwe of Ihalomona was a barrister at that time at Abakaliki. He wrote a complaint that was published, I think, in the Outlook about, insufficient inclusion. Zik went to Abakaliki to see him. I said, barrister, you know me, why didn't you tell me this thing? He dissolved this thing and made changes because he couldn't, there was no, he didn't have the mind of rigging an election. The white people were there at that time. NCNC was a mass party. So he was afraid of the people, and he wanted opinion of himself as a, a man of character to remain. But these people don't, the more you accuse them of wrongdoing, the more wrongdoing they do.
So you're not seeing any hope for us in this 2025?
Yeah, Professor Obu said, watch who somebody is afraid of.
Dr. Stan Ukeje, a development economist, many thanks for your time and your insight today. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much for coming.
It's my pleasure being in your company.
All right. So we're back shortly after this. Do stay with us.